think every child has a right to be happy.
Every child has a right to freedom of speech.
To learn, to be safe.
Protection.
To feel nurtured.
Fun, happiness and a safe childhood.
London is the economic heart of the UK. With a £162 billion economy, it makes us larger than some countries in the EU.
Nationally, there is about 2.4 million households who have been pushed into poverty because of high housing costs, and about 1.1 million of those households have children.
Hardship in London today is masked by generally raised living standards, but the fast-paced way of living in the city leaves many families behind. Poverty in London wasn't always so discreet. Before the welfare state, and with no other options left and starvation imminent, the workhouses were a last resort. A workhouse was a place where people who were unable to support themselves could go and live and work. However, life in the workhouses was intended to be as off-putting as possible. In 1840, Lord Ashley, a notable parliamentarian and philanthropist, compiled hundreds of interviews with children all around the country who worked and lived in workhouses and factories.
It is not hard work. I come to work at 9 o'clock, go home to dinner at 2, have an hour, and then go to work until 9 at night. I am not tired at night. I cannot read or write. I like the work I am at.
I've been 2 years and a half in this factory. I have a sore head. I don't know how it came, it's not from the work. The blockers sometimes give us slaps on the head. They are not allowed to beat us. If the overseer saw them beat us, they would be fined. It is not hard work. I would rather stay here than at home.
I do not know my age exactly, as my mother has been dead for 4 or 5 years. And after her death I was taken to the House of Refuge for the Destitute by my father.
Lord Ashley's report led to 2 important pieces of legislation, one being the Factory Act of 1844, which restricted children aged 8 to 13 to working 6.5 hours a day.
The Blitz brought World War II onto home soil, with children being exposed to great levels of violence.
The earliest memory I can remember is my mother really being very nervous because the siren had gone. You got warning. When we were being raided in London, you got the siren going, which gave you a warning to get to the shelter as quickly as possible. And being just a child of about 4 or 5, you didn't really know what was going on around you, but you felt the panic that was there.
My most vivid memory of it was the firemen coming down and saying you can't stay down here no more because the water would flood in, you know. So we had to come out, and as we come out it was just a blaze, all the window frames. I can always remember the window frames with all the fire around the window frames, like, you know.
And I remember as a child seeing all the wild flowers growing.
Yes.
Yeah. It was unbelievable how the wild flowers came out. For adults, it must have been a horrendous time for them.
It wasn't frightening for us.
It wasn't frightening for us because we were children.
No, it was good fun actually.
Of course you realise now what devastation we had lived through. But of course, I mean, you would go into these buildings and boys being what they are, they did very adventurous things. And of course, me being the younger sister, I used to be taken along. Mainly in those days you played in the street. There was no designated areas for you to play.
After the war came the massive job to clear up London's bombed out landscape. Two decades later, the repercussions of the war were still being felt. Many of London's children were living in cramped and substandard housing.
Bad housing affects the lives of children in some key ways. For example, bad housing really affects the education of children. Bad housing also affects children's health. They're more liable to get meningitis or asthma or other respiratory diseases, for example, and more likely to have poor sleep patterns and things like that.
I've been on the waiting list for nearly 5 years now. Well, I don't think this is right. I think today, in the 20th century, that we should all have better houses to live in, and I don't think anybody should be forced to live in these surroundings.
An unexpected effect of the war was a change in attitudes towards children's play. The wartime children's makeshift playground amongst the rubble had been removed, but the children still wanted adventure. Adults recognised this as important, and a new movement set out to construct safe replicas in the form of adventure playgrounds.
They want a playground and they want to run around. When I take her to the park, she doesn't want to come home.
There's nowhere at all for a child to play. Ought to be.
The boards, you see, so they look for other children to play with. She's got liberty, she's got a playground.
Every child should have the right to play because it signifies so much more than just play. It means you're having a childhood, you're able to enjoy yourself, be young, have fun, not worry about the worries that we have when we reach young adulthood and beyond. And it signifies a freedom and a jollity that if you don't have, I think it severely affects child development.
The materials might be high-tech, but today's playgrounds are similar to the ones in the past. So what has changed? Have housing conditions and opportunities improved for children today?
When we think about Victorian housing and World War II, we think of quite extreme poverty, we think of slums. Obviously we don't see that kind of level of poverty and bad housing on a day-to-day basis in London, but that does mask an underlying problem. We have thousands of children living in severely overcrowded houses in London, and also lots of children in temporary accommodation or who are homeless, who are having to move around all the time into different houses, which can really affect their education.
It's better being kidnapped because there's equal opportunities.
You could get whipped, you could get caned, but now it's not like that. It's against the law to hit children at school and cane them at school and give them punishments except from detention.
Money sense, I suppose we was deprived, but then now I think they get far too much. I've got nieces and nephews that have sacks and stacks of stuff at Christmas and never even look at half of it.
There are things I want, not need, like a new bike and my own laptop or a brand new phone or anything else, but they're things I want, not need.
Today's children might have all the latest consumer goods, but it seems to have come at a price.
The biggest threats of the rights of the children in London, freedom and their youth.
Certain parts of the community that just don't care what children are actually doing when they're on the streets.
I think the biggest threats to the rights of children in London would be something like, well, it's adults.